This month we're talking about stress, and it's really a timely subject right now because you're hearing on the news a lot that the next upcoming problem after COVID 19 coronavirus is going to be mental health problems and diseases. And people are saying that it's not just with the changes made to the brains of people who have the disease, but all the stress, prolonged stress, anxiety, and things are really affecting people. And they think it's going to be, a long term issue because people are basically allowing stress to, you might say, rewire their brains. We've got to really think about that. We do not want to, have mental health problems that last the rest of our lives over this issue. But at least some people out there, scientists, are thinking that's a possibility. And so this is really a very timely subject, I think. So let's talk a little bit about stress. Stress is not always a bad thing. If you look at that bear over here, if you are taking a hike in Alaska and this bear's coming up behind you, stress is going to be a very appropriate uh, reaction and normal. Stress to that degree sets off what they call the fight or flight response. Uh, the more appropriate response in this case is probably flight. You don't want to fight that thing, I can tell you. On the other hand, if you really get down to it, you're not supposed to run from them either. It's a tricky situation with bears. They say that running actually triggers their response to chase something. So, and you can't outrun a bear. It just doesn't happen. But at any rate, this is a natural thing. Stress is natural. Uh, but, a lot of times we have chronic stress that lasts, not just for the short duration of time that it's beneficial, but chronic stress that continues on, and it's actually quite harmful in a lot of ways. And Hans Seeley, I don't know if you all know who he is or not, but he is actually the person that first described stress as a physiological phenomenon. Uh, he's kind of the father of stress, so to speak, in the scientific community and medical communities. And he says it's not stress that kills us, it's our reaction to the stress. And I think he's correct. Uh, and, the stress itself is bad, but you can manage it if you really work at it and try. Um, Stress during an infectious disease outbreak like we're having now, the COVID 19 pandemic, can cause some following things that have been actually documented by the CDC. And you can see the link to their site there. Fear and worry about your own health and the health of your loved ones, your financial situation or job or support services you rely on. The economic stress that's being piled on people right now is very serious for a lot of people. And I think everybody can identify with if you've lost your job, some of your income, you're behind on bills. Every time you hear a phone call, you're wondering, is it going to be a bill collector after you? And your stress levels go up significantly. Uh, anybody, I know I've experienced that before, and I imagine most of us have actually. It's just a normal response, and then it turns out not to be that, but we stressed ourselves out in the meantime. So it's really something serious. Changes in sleep and eating patterns, that's very common, and these kind of changes result from stress and also cause stress. So it's kind of a vicious cycle you have there. Uh, Difficulty sleeping, concentrating, worsening of chronic health problems. If you already have health problems, the stress associated with living today is probably making them worse because I think almost the entire population is stressed over everything right now. I can't think of anyone I know who's not feeling stress from it. Uh, Maybe some of you aren't. I don't know, but most people are. And if even if they don't realize it, there's this underlying concern, worry, uh, that's raising our stress levels, worsening of mental health conditions. People that already have mental health problems, you know, they're greatly exacerbated by this. People use more tobacco and alcohol under these situations, and they're doing it now. Not a great thing for their health to overdo those things, for sure. So stress is having some very harmful effects on our population right now. And we really need to try to mitigate that because, like we said in the beginning, these are likely to be ongoing serious problems for many years. Social distancing itself is causing stress and loss of touch. Uh, this study actually concluded, I won't go through exactly what they did there, but more frequent physical stress, touch is related to the likelihood of more frequent lack of physical touch. I made a typo there. It's significantly related to likelihood of elevated inflammation. So the lack of physical touch actually increases our levels of inflammation, which does an enormous amount of damage in the body. Discussion said that these findings highlight the importance of finding safe ways to incorporate physical touch, even in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. Uh, and you can see one of the ways on the picture over here on the left, they have these kind of glove box-like things that allow somebody who's infected to hug, probably a daughter in this case. They are actually setting these things up. Uh, and people, they don't shake hands anymore. That's taboo. Uh, it's you don't give your friends a hug when they come over. If you used to do that, and many people did. People are staying distance from each other, and they need to, but it's causing stress. So we need to realize that. Now, we'll just run through a little bit here about hormones, but there's a number of hormones that are related to stress. Uh, but first of all, stress is a state of tension anxiety over time, which causes a series of alterations in our feelings and physical discomfort. Uh, Bruce McEwen, who was actually a student, I think, of Hans Selye, defined it as stress is real or supposed threat to physiological or psychological integrity of an individual that provokes a physical or behavioral response. In medicine, it's often referred to as a situation that increases circulating levels of glucocorticoids and catecholamines, which it does, and they're over there on the left. So, what we see is that, on one hand, stress is the alteration of psychological origin that causes a series of modifications in physical function. Stress is involved in the activity of different hormones, which causes body changes in a very direct manner. Cortisol is kind of the stress hormone in a way, and it does cause very significant um, changes in other hormones. It raises the level of glucagon in your body, which releases blood sugar into the bloodstream for the purpose of having energy for the fight or flight type mechanism. Makes sense. But, it's not something you want on an ongoing basis to raise your blood sugars like that. Prolactin, testosterone, estrogen are all affected by uh, stress. Leptin appears to be, but the thing about cortisol, the top one there that's sort of unique about it, chronic elevated cortisol actually ends up causing fat to be deposited in the liver And people are still speculating about exactly how and why it does that. It probably is related to that elevated blood sugar a little bit, but they don't know. But also, Sean Talbot, a researcher and a person who was pretty widely recognized back in the probably 19 late 1990s, I think. Anyway, he found that it increases visceral fat. You have this chronic elevated cortisol, which is usually related to stress. And so this is causing this really harmful fat in your body, uh, associated with the liver, associated with other internal organs. Not the fat you see on the outside, but fat deep in the body. And that's a very bad thing. Also, the one I really wanted to highlight today is one called Grayling. Now, you've probably never heard of Grayling, but it's a hormone that is released in the stomach when you eat or when you haven't eaten and causes you to eat. So it's a appetite increasing hormone. Grayling is also uh, increased by stress. So that makes stress cause you to eat more. Now, I was really uh, a study that I heard about when I was at the Obesity Society meeting some years ago in San Antonio, Texas, was a mouse study. Uh, they took two mice, well, they took pairs of mice, but he told us about one in particular. They got a mouse that was one of the very large, aggressive type mice, uh, and he paired it with the runt of the group of mice, a little small mouse and timid mouse. So you got the big mean mouse and the little timid mouse, and put them in a cage together. This is really an awful experiment. It's mean. But what happened is, of course, the big mouse went after the little mouse, chased it all around the cage. Of course, they wouldn't allow the big mouse to actually harm it, but scared the poor little mouse to death, the timid mouse. Okay, fine. After that, a few days of really conditioning that mouse to be afraid of that big mouse, they put him in a cage that had a plastic plexiglass divider. And so they put one mouse on one side and the other mouse on the other side. Now the big mouse couldn't get to the little mouse, so he didn't have to be chased around. But the little timid mouse had already learned to be terrified of that big mouse, and of course the big mouse would run up to the plexiglass and scare the mouse. And then they had food and water in there with them. The little mouse, of course, was highly anxious, running around and constantly running to the food bowl, eating a little bit and then running the other way, back and forth, eating an enormous amount of food for a mouse. And then they tested his ghrelin levels, and it was absolutely out the roof. I mean, literally off the charts. Very high ghrelin and huge amount of eating. And this sort of study has been repeated, actually. I don't know how they get through the institutional review boards with that one, but that's another story. But it's a pretty stressful testing for the mice, but it really shows the effect of ghrelin on appetite and the effect of that kind of stimulation, appetite on actual eating behavior in the mouse. So that was pretty interesting because we can really see what how stress is affecting us. Now that's pretty extreme stress, but at lower levels, it still does it. And you're seeing now, well, on Facebook this morning, a woman was complaining that she had gained 19 pounds since COVID-19. And she's attributing she's not going to the gym because it's closed and fussing about that. But I tell you, she doesn't gain 19 pounds because she's not going to the gym. She's gaining 19 pounds because she's under stress and eating more, almost for sure. Uh, Not going to the gym doesn't help, but you wouldn't gain that much weight just by missing the gym alone. So, she really needs to take a little bit closer look at her behavior and her stress levels. This has been confirmed, and this may be I can't remember who did the study that I saw in San Antonio, but it may have been this guy. He's at University of Texas Southwestern, Jeffrey Zigman. He found this is a very new study. It's actually only published online, not in a regular journal yet, but in Nature Neuroscience. Um, as we said, Grayling is made in the gut to sends hunger signals to the brain. Here it says orexigenic hormone Grayling defends against depressive symptoms of chronic stress. Now, I hadn't really thought about it from that angle before. I hadn't, but it actually, he said, and I can't, your pictures are blocking a little bit of my screen there, but anyway, he said, we found that increasing ghrelin levels through subcutaneous injection or calorie restriction produced anxiolytic and antidepressant-like responses in the elevated maze and forced swim tests. So it had antidepressant responses giving them ghrelin. The persistently increased ghrelin levels, whereas growth hormone secretagogue null mice showed increased deleterious effects from chronic defeat. Together, these findings demonstrate a previously unknown function for ghrelin in defending against depressive-like symptoms of chronic stress. However, he also mentioned in an interview, Dr. Zigman said, an unfortunate side effect, however, is increased food intake and body weight. Therefore, yeah, the ghrelin is actually helping fend off stress, but it's going to make you fat too. So, it's better if you can fend off the stress on your own. Let me put it that way, without needing the ghrelin to do it. Because unfortunately, if it increases your food intake and body weight, that's probably going to cause you more stress down the road. It's there again, it's one of those vicious cycles. So, stress is really quite harmful and something that we need to guard against. But there's a lot of strategies we're going to talk about now about how to deal with stress. Now, first of all, up here in this corner on the top left there, the news media is causing a lot of us stress. Social media is causing a lot of our stress, frankly. You can't go open the news without hearing all kinds of terrible tales these days. It's not just about COVID-19. It may be about the riots. It may be about a lot of things. But the news media is causing probably more stress in our lives than is justified for the coronavirus, honestly. It's something we need to take seriously and deal with. But like this guy say, we're all going to die, is sort of the message you're getting. And it has an effect on us, I think. We really need to look at, consider what we're putting into our brains. There's a lot of people that, constantly bombard us with doom and gloom messages, and that's not healthful for us. Even if it's true, it's not good for our health. And so trying to avoid that kind of thing will really do us a lot of good. Now, on the other side over here, something that we can proactively do, when you help other people, you really, it gives you a sense of control of your own life. So many people sit and listen to all these doom and gloom messages all day and feel helpless. That feeling of helplessness greatly increases our stress. When you're actually taking action to do something about it, it decreases your stress immensely, and other people's, and helps them. You know, if you're somebody that can sew masks to give away to people, you know, that will reduce your stress, I guarantee it. If you can, you know, find other ways of helping people, uh, and and encouraging people, maybe making posts on your Facebook, positive posts that you think will, you know, help them deal with this. Anything you can do. In my case, I could be designing supplements for people. I'm feeling like I'm doing something worthwhile. Everybody doesn't get to do that, but you know, anything you can do to help people cope with this is going to help you cope with it as well. Now, diet is something that's really important right now, more than ever, because people aren't as active as they can. When you're under stress and you have that grayling coming out, the first thing you want to do is snack on junk food. Guaranteed, almost everybody. You know, you really need to resist that. Eat these really good quality foods. Uh, and they actually do contain bioactive compounds that help you deal with stress. Um, there are supplements that can help you deal with stress. You know, for years, and I don't have it pictured here, but stress supplements for the last 50 years have usually been B complex and vitamin C. That's the typical stress supplement in the natural food industry. And it makes sense. Those do help with stress. And B vitamins particularly are very important. And among the B vitamins, vitamin B12, absolutely crucial for brain health. But our relax uh, evening formula, if you're having trouble sleeping, it really does work. Some people, in fact, a lot of people do fine with just one capsule in the evening before they go to bed if they need to use it. For me, it takes two. I'm more resistant to it or something. But for most people, I think one is pretty good. We also have relaxed daytime formula, which contains theanine, tyrosine, GABA, uh, gamma aminobutyric acid, bacopa extract, and mucuna pruriens, which has L-DOPA, which is really a feel-good hormone, as well as a nutrient. Very good thing to help you be more kind of relaxed and mellow during the day. Um, the relaxed evening contains two precursors to serotonin, tryptophan, which is the first step, 5-hydroxytryptamine, which is the next step after tryptophan, and then the body takes it from there, and that gives it kind of a sustained release effect. It also has bacopa extract and melatonin. Not a huge dose of melatonin, but a small one. And it's really helpful too. So these are very good supplements for daytime and evening. I'm also looking at some other supplements, and if any of you have experience with it, I'm looking right now very seriously at ashwagandha, which is has some reasonable research for stress reduction, and rhodiola rosea and ginseng. These are considered in the quote alternative medicine, natural foods field as something called adaptogens. Now, that's not a scientifically recognized term, so you can't really study them as such very well. That's used more in, I think Oriental medicine uses that term some, here in the United States at least. There's probably an equivalent in Asia to it. But it's not recognized as a term by the medical authorities here or in the European Union. The word adaptogen isn't. So that's neither here nor there. But if you want to look up something like that, you'd look up more like mental stress, mental energy. Those are terms that you can find in the scientific literature that might be relevant. But the idea of an adaptogen is that it increases your body's capacity to maintain homeostasis. And homeostasis is a scientific concept that's very important. In fact, that's probably the most crucial thing to understand about physiology. Now, something I've used for years to reduce stress, and it works, is just going out and getting some exercise, going for a walk. You're feeling under stress, or if I feel under stress, I'll put it that way. If I feel stressed, unhappy, irritable, whatever, if I go out and take a walk, that does wonders to straighten that out for me. And I can't speak to other people, but for me, that really works. I just get out and clear my head, get some exercise, and it works. Probably the last thing for everyone here who has religious inclinations, is prayer, staying in touch with God, taking the time to relax, meditate, communicate in prayer. That can do wonders for many people. And each of you probably has a little bit different way of dealing with that. But, all these things are things that we need to keep in mind. But the worst thing you can do is nothing. If you're sitting around stewing over what you're hearing in the news and taking no action, you're really letting yourself down and causing your body and your mind a lot of harm. And so what we really want to do is to try to help everybody get through this with a mental and physical health that's not just okay, but great and wonderful. And I thank you for listening. We're finished for today. And have a wonderful rest of the week. If anyone has questions or comments, they're welcome to chime in right now. Questions, comments, observations?